911 has just turned 30 years old. New in 1995, it cost $115,000, and 30 years later, values are skyrocketing. I'm going to take you through this car from the start to where it sits in the market now, explain to you if this 911 Turbo could make you money. So we're here with Ben, the owner of this gorgeous 993. It'd be great to hear a bit about how you came to acquire this stunning example.
I got into the classics because I had a 964 before this. I know
Yeah.
we talk about those historically. Then I had that for a period and decided about where I was going to go next. So I sold the 964, so I had the cash ready to go. Then I was looking at what options I could consider.
Yeah.
The 993 Turbo was on the list. One of my favourite cars of all time is the Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale.
Yeah.
And I've wanted one of those since they've been in existence, but they always seem to be that bit too much ahead of me financially. And then the third option was a Lamborghini Huracan Performante. Going through the process, I discarded the Performante because whilst it would have been fun to just have and drive and enjoy, I sort of discounted it from an investment, residual future value point of view. And then the 360, in my research, most of them seem to be garage queens. People buy them, they sit on them, they don't drive them.
Yeah, you wanted something you could use a bit on the sort of, obviously not crazy amount of use, but something you could still get that enjoyment factor out of.
Exactly. I just have the one car, so I don't just want to sit and stare at it.
Yeah.
I want to drive it. So then you look into things like the Porsche, and these do seem to be cars that people own, they drive.
Yes.
And whilst it does have some impact on the residual value, it doesn't as much as say putting 4,000 miles on a Ferrari. Ultimately, whilst we were looking, this was came across my path, and it was just the perfect spec. I mean, I couldn't have hoped.
Should we have a walk around and sort of like, if we start at the back with the aero kit?
So it's all factory, and obviously in 95 they didn't have the Turbo S, but the guy who bought this originally has spec'd it like a Turbo S and actually spent more on it than the equivalent of the Turbo S in 97 when they came out. But he ticked a lot of the options boxes, so I think he even spent £700 having the steering wheel in the same colour leather as the rest of the interior. Got the performance kit upgrade, factory sports exhaust, factory aero kit, and then the special order interior. And actually if you come around here, it's got quite a nice little feature. This was again an option at the time, which I think was very special, was the Nokia digital sound processing.
Oh wow.
Very 1990s, but
that is very 90s.
You probably don't see too many of those.
No, not at all. The 993 Turbo, for me, I think such like the antithesis of like the pinnacle of the 90s. It was very like a city car, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you were top of your game if you had a 993, if you're rolling around in one of these. I think that's what allures people to the like pinnacle of the Turbo. And there's what sort of carried the newer models as well. Like cars of this era are, like you say, excess. Like you don't need the Turbo, but it's about saying you're just better with It's like I'm just a bit better. I'm just a little bit better than everyone else. I tried a bit harder. But why does this car stand out from other Porsches from the era? During the 90s in Stuttgart, Porsche was under financial pressure to keep the company alive. The later 996 cut a lot of corners to save money, while the 993 in comparison was a very expensive car, replacing the legendary 964. Produced between 1995 and 1998, around 6,000 993 turbos were built, the last of the air-cooled Porsche 911s. This being a 1995 example, finished in Amethyst Metallic, believed to be the only car finished in this colour in the entire United Kingdom. This was the first all-wheel drive 911 Turbo, a system taken from the masterpiece that was the 959, so it can't be taken for granted how advanced this car was for 1995. Underneath the iconic Welltail is a 3.6 litre engine producing 408 horsepower. One thing we always look for with investment cars is if the car is the right specification from factory. This example features sports exhaust, aero kit and power package, checking all the boxes. Even inside, a desirable Rubicon interior and only 46,000 miles on the clock.
It's the only C16 993 Turbo in Amethyst Metallic.
Amazing.
And again, at the time, I think that was something like 1,500 quid as an option, and people just didn't do that because it just seemed excessive. And also at the time, the colours were all blacks and silvers.
Yeah, entirely, yeah.
The idea that you buy a Porsche in a slightly off-the-run colour was unusual, whereas now the PTS, they're everywhere. But
no, exactly. I think it's the one thing that, like, now looking, that's obviously why these special colours are more desirable as investments now. Back in the day, like you say, not many people were brave enough to order this colour. Like you'd go for a silver, a black, maybe arena. You get to see quite a few of these in arena red, a blue. But the rarity element that this colour creates adds good value to this car.
100%. And when I was offered it, to be frank, I couldn't believe that this had found its way in front of me.
So Ben, should we take the car out for a little drive and talk about other cars that you've had in your history and sort of highlight cars that you've owned as investments, maybe bought some at the very right time and maybe should have kept on to them, but it'd be interesting to hear more about your decision making for those purchases.
Sure, would have liked to have kept most of them, but unfortunately the budget doesn't allow.
So Ben, it'd be great to hear about where it all started for you and what was that particular car that got you into owning cars as assets.
The first car of what you would consider under that category was an M3 CSL that I bought in 2006. They came out in 2003, but at the time I think they were twice the price of a standard M3. But I can remember at the time when the car came out, I can remember watching Jeremy Clarkson do a review on Top Gear. And I think from that moment, I just fell in love with it. I couldn't afford it at the time, but then fast forward 3 years, they more or less halved in value at that stage. And I started doing my research and I found a really low mileage, well-maintained example. Bought it, private sale. And I can just remember the day of picking up and driving it back. That induction noise that you got from the airbox was just addictive. And it also felt special because it was a limited run. It had a little plaque down in the center console saying it was one of 400, I think it was. And it was just different to the standard M3. And I think that's what got me into it. It wasn't from a long-term investment point of view. It was, I liked the idea that it was something a bit special.
Yeah, owning something that not many people had.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, amazing.
And so that was the first sort of foray into special cars.
And how long did you keep the CSL for?
So I had that for 3 years.
Yeah.
Just enjoyed it, but over the course of my ownership of various cars, 3 years seemed to be my limit. I seemed to have them for 3 years and then get an itch I need to scratch and go somewhere else. Actually, I then sold that car to buy an R8, and that was in 2009, so they were quite new at the time.
Was that a V10 or V8?
That was the V8.
Okay. Manual?
That was a V8 manual, yeah.
Nice.
White with the black side blades. And again, that was a bit special. That's the first time I got the reveal, take the cover off at the dealership in Audi. So that was quite exciting. Went down to Brighton to collect that one to drive it back. I like that car, but I always found what's drawn me to quite a lot of the cars I've bought over the years is the sound and the noise they make. And I always found that on the outside, the R8 made a great noise, but you could never really hear it on the inside, which was a bit disappointing. Anyway, then I had that thing for 2 years, and I remember there was a dealership in Uxbridge that I was looking to change things up. The dealership in Uxbridge had a 996 GT3 RS, and they also had a roof R compressor. And I thought both of those were very interesting. They both fit the limited run. At the time, these things weren't really appreciating. So that wasn't a consideration. It was just more about their rare special editions. Anyway, so I went up to the dealership. Unfortunately, by the time I got there, they'd taken a deposit on the 996 GT3 RS, which I think with hindsight was probably my first choice. But that was removed, and then they had this dark metallic blue with a tan interior, but a custom built roll cage that was embedded into the upholstery.
Amazing.
And it supercharged, and it was just a lovely bit of kit. And the noise, it sounded like a Spitfire.
Okay.
If you drove it anywhere near a tunnel or a wall at the side of the road, it sounded like a Spitfire. It was absolutely glorious bit of kit. So thoroughly enjoyed having that. So after that, this was around about the time of the financial crisis.
So around sort of 09, 08 now,
yeah, just after that, and the credit crunch, and now we're into the government quantitative easing.
Yes.
And I'm just watching various cars, they're shooting up in value.
Yeah.
But some are going and some aren't.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of a lag effect. Carrera GTs at the time were 200 grand. So we considered pooling our resources and buying one and just seeing where that went. But that was an idea maybe born in the pub, and it never really took off.
What was the stoppers to that at the time? More sort of organisation of getting everyone sort of willing to jump on board?
Well, no, yes, I think the problem would have been who's going to have it in the summer.
Yeah.
If you've got 4 owners of one car.
It's always awkward, that, isn't it?
Yeah, how that dynamic would play out in the real world. But maybe it was just an idea, but unfortunately it never happened, because obviously that would have been a great move. And I'm looking at the various, and what didn't seem to be moving was the 355 Ferrari.
Okay.
So I looked at those, and then I started to research. I went down to Modena, in Meridian Modena in the New Forest, and I bought 355. For my sins, it wasn't the manual, which perhaps could have been a mistake, but it was Rossa Corso with the Crema interior, which was just...
what was it? Berlinetta, GTS, Spider?
It was a Spider.
Spider, okay.
I remember picking that up, driving it home. That made the most wonderful noise. As you can tell, there's a bit of a theme here. I do like the sound.
Yeah.
And I had that for 2 years and watched it just double in value. Like every month they were going up, up and up.
And what sort of price did you pay for that one?
So I paid 65, but that was from a main dealer. So, that was top of the tree. And I sold it 2 years later for 112.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was...
what sort of mileage did you do in that time?
Probably 4,000 miles. Like, I didn't really use it that much. But
well, that's still, for if a decent amount of use for that sort of return is amazing.
It was, yeah, a great bit of kit. And like I say, a lot of the fun was just watching, because the rises at that time, obviously fueled by the state of the economy, would just start. And it was just, like I say, every month these things were going up in value. So
it's obviously a much sweeter ownership experience when you don't have to experience that sort of depreciation.
No, absolutely right. So we did a couple of road trips. I think that was where the realization came that you can buy these things, own them, and make money on them.
Well, it proves you only need that one experience one time to show that if you do buy these cars strategically for the right price, forward trends are somewhat predictable.
Yes. What was interesting about the 355 is because of everything that was going on in the financial market, is that all cars were going, not all cars, but a lot of cars were going up, but some that weren't necessarily of the right credentials to be investment quality cars. And actually, if you look at the 355, that was definitely inflated price because of the times, because now they're back to sort of 85.
Yeah, particularly for a Spider F1, you're probably looking at 75, 80.
Exactly.
Maybe a bit more for very low mileage one, but
to sort of go on that, most investment cars, they go on the dip and then they go up and they keep going up. But I think a lot of the specialist stuff kept on the track, but the stuff that maybe wasn't quite of the right criteria has then subsequently cooled. So
so the one thing that's changed out there is maybe today there is more of a demand for manuals.
Yes.
Maybe that wasn't the case as significantly 15 years ago. Is that now with 355s, you can see there's big price difference between an F1 and a manual.
And I totally agree. That was a mistake in my research at the time, if you look back on it, to not have bought a manual.
But obviously over that ownership period, for you had the car, it probably wouldn't have made that much of a difference. But for your situation, your circumstances, obviously looking ahead, maybe circumstances changed.
No, that was, so that was good. So then now my attention is pricked into this sort of environment. So I was like, where do I go next? Quite like the look of a 997 GT2.
Yes.
So we did quite a lot of research on that. Biggest problem with those was the over revs, because it was quite easy for you go over a slight lift in the road, the wheels would spin up and then you're hitting the limiter. You had to be quite fastidious in your searching with ones that check the rev report. But anyway, I found an amazing Guards Red 997 GT2, which I bought from Ashgood Classics.
Yep.
I think from a performance point of view and just driver engagement, that's one of the best cars I've ever owned.
Really?
And I think of all the cars I have owned, I never had the money to keep them all, but if I could have kept one of them, I think it would have been that.
Really? Okay.
GT2.
How long did you have that one for?
So I had that for 2 years.
Okay.
Again, got in and out, I think pretty much for what I paid. I think I made a slight turn, but paying the dealer ask and then I'm hitting the dealer bid. So,
Yeah, and that's a net up in a sense.
That's what I thought. But just remember, that's the one that I think got away.
The one that got away?
Yeah, if I could have kept that one. Okay. And then that was about the time that I got into retailing sports cars.
Yes.
And that sort of then probably led me down the road to where we are today, because we were getting quite a few 964s in part exchange, and we were sort of actively searching, because my colleague at the time knew these things inside out. He was a great asset in terms of buying these things. So then we got into buying a few of those. And I sort of just fell in love with the way you sit in a 964. The seat envelops you. It's not a racing seat, but you sort of sink into it. And it's such an analog driving experience. Like you really feel like you're actually part of the car.
You're really driving that car, aren't you?
Sweet spot for the power.
Yeah.
Over the few years that we were buying and selling those, I did again quite a lot of research and I found a really nice example, but it needed some work. So we bought it, we rebuilt the engine, did some work on the paint. Then COVID struck. I had to sell quite a few cars, so we auctioned that off. But we got back what we paid for it plus the work done. But then I stayed in touch with the buyer and he offered it back to me about 18 months later, which I had to pay a premium for, but I knew it was a good car because we'd done the work on the engine and whatnot. So then I bought that back, and then I had that for 4 years, which in my car
that's a longer sort of
unusual
ownership.
And I just used to love it. In the summer, I just was in it all the time, taking the kids to school in it. Great car. And then that got me into these classic Porsches, and you understand the world and the following and the investment potential. So that's where we ended up.
In the 993 Turbo today?
Yes.
Car guys from the 90s who grew up with these cars on their bedroom wall are now in the position to buy them. That is why we're seeing significant appreciation. As time passes, the 993 becomes more ingrained as an all-time classic of the period. In 2011, you could have bought one for $90,000. And before the world was consumed by something that would get us demonetized, you would have paid between $120,000 and $140,000. And over the past 5 years, the car has had an annualized return rate of 16.2%. If you had bought one 5 years ago, you would have paid $130,000. Your investment would now be worth $275,000, an ROI of 111.5%. The Turbo now has a market value of $275,000. To find out more about other cars that won't depreciate and cars that we would deem investment grade, please visit the autofolio.info website, so you can save yourself tens of thousands by not buying the wrong cars. While the 993 Turbo is currently living its high life, all good things must come to an end. But will this turbo euphoria last? This is what I think after helping thousands of people buy investment cars. The 993 remains in the prime demographic of buyers that continues to appreciate. The market of buyers is continuing to grow from cars of the 90s era. The turbo is the pinnacle of the 911 lineup, with the 993 being the last of the air-cooled Porsches. This is the model to own in any portfolio. The cult status of the 911 remains to be significantly strong. As a result, demand will always be high for the highest quality models that they have made, such as this 993 turbo. We've seen the most significant relative appreciation for the 993 turbo over the last decade. As with any investment car, there are those that are adequate and those that are investment grade. Prices of the right low mileage, correct specification, well-maintained examples will continue to rise steadily for years to come. Ben is like you and I. He's a car guy and able to use his Porsche that he loves while not losing money. That is the dream scenario. So I've spent a silly amount of time putting together a list of the 50 best investment cars to buy in 2025. Cars that are underappreciated, last of their kind, and where the market of buyers is growing. Comment watch list and I'll send you a link to directly access Investment Cars 2025. And if you want to learn more about investment cars, please subscribe so you don't miss out on our next investment car analysis.